Welcome to Round the County. I'm your host, Ken Van Zant. When it comes to the arts and entertainment, we are truly rich with talent here in Tioga County. One group who has certainly made that evident is Hamilton-Gibson Productions, bringing us plays, musicals, and a host of talented young voices. Hamilton-Gibson Productions has been a dream come true for artistic director Thomas Putnam. But his passion for the theater actually started at a very early age.
My first memory of being on the stage is when I was 3 years old. And my parents were both musicians. And they created an Americana kind of review for our whole family. It's kind of like the Osmond family. And so my parents and older sister and two brothers and I were dressed up in red, white, and blue and would perform for civic groups, and church groups and so on. And the only thing that I really remember from that experience was that we had these big red, white, and blue top hats, and I was only 3. So we had to keep stuffing it with paper because it would keep falling down over my head. Anyway, that's my first recollection of being on stage. And then when I was 5 years old, I can clearly remember seeing the touring company of Sound of Music with Florence Henderson. And I remember sitting there at intermission and telling my dad that I just didn't want it to be over. There was something about it, something about a live production, seeing that happen on stage that just, I don't know what it was that grabbed me, but that's when it first started. And then through school, I was in school plays and school functions and music groups and all the choirs and any production that I could be in through high school. And then when I first went to college, I went for theater at Illinois Wesleyan and studied acting there. My dream at that point was that I was going to act professionally, and at least that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then somewhere in the middle of college, somehow I began questioning it all. Is this really what we ought to be doing? This was the early 70s, and the draft was going on, the Vietnam War and protests, and everybody trying to find themselves and so on. So everybody was questioning everything then, and I was questioning whether pretending that you're somebody else on stage is really a viable experience, or is that what we ought to be committing ourselves to do, or should we be finding ourselves, the truth somewhere else? So actually I quit college, and I was in a commune in Ohio for a while, and really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I got a letter from my grandmother, who was here in Wellsboro, and said, come to Mansfield and get a teaching degree. So I did.
Graduating from college in 1976 and armed with his degree, Thomas headed into a teaching career, starting off in Wellsboro, then eventually settling in at the New Covenant Academy in Mansfield. But in the late 80s, the realization he still had that need to be involved in theater would be the beginning of a new direction.
In 1990, I had actually worked a little bit with some school plays, and began to see that this is really what I enjoyed doing, and things really clicked when I was working on a theater experience. And I loved teaching at the same time, so I loved kids and I loved theater, and it seemed to be a great mix. And in the late 80s, we realized that there wasn't that kind of experience for people here, either to be in or to see. So there are a handful of people who, over a couple of years, talked about that possibility of starting something. And in the summer of '91, we decided, let's kind of like the old Mickey Rooney movie, let's put on a play. So we didn't have any name, we didn't have any funding, we didn't have any idea what we were going to do. We didn't even know exactly where we were going to do these plays. We had auditions for The Miracle Worker and a little play called The Yearling. And then we made arrangements with a former farm implement garage midway between Mansfield and Wellsboro, which is now a church. And at that point, it was just beginning to be a church. They were using the front part of the building, and we used the back part, the big garage part. So it had fairly high ceilings, quite high ceilings, and lots of nice space. and we got the power blasters and blasted away everything, cleaned it all up, and set up a little makeshift stage with some platforms, and we put on the weekend of The Miracle Worker. And it was packed. People turned out, and people really seemed to be hungry for it. So the next year we planned 3 plays, Oliver and The Boys Next Door and Cheaper by the Dozen. And all sorts of people turned out for this and wanted to be in it. And we had lots of kids, of course, in Oliver and Cheaper by the Dozen, and it was fun. In the meantime, during that year, we decided on a name. And in fact, that first summer, we explored a lot of different names. And my 2 grandmothers were both artists in various ways. They painted, they were both musicians, they were involved in a lot of different kinds of arts. They loved children, they were both educators, they were ready to take risks. So we named it after them. And we put productions on there because at that time we were just doing plays, but we knew that this could expand to more of the arts, and we didn't want to limit it to just the theater productions. So that's why we used the word productions, because that could incorporate all sorts of things, and that's happened.
As Hamilton-Gibson Productions headed into their 1993 season, little did they realize at the time that choosing a certain play would be responsible for eventually taking their group to a whole new level.
In the 3rd year, in '93, I'd come across a little play called I Never Saw Another Butterfly. It's a play about children in the Holocaust in Terezin, Czechoslovakia. This particular place, just north of Prague, was a place for the Jews in Prague to go. I mean, they were forced to go there. It was essentially a concentration camp. And while they were there, they created art experiences, plays, operas, singing, choral experiences, painting, poetry, and it was hidden and forgotten about until about 15 years after the war. Somebody had sent it to somebody in Prague. When it was finally realized what it was, this testament of the power of art in kids' lives. It's what gave them a sense of dignity and hope and purpose, and it just kind of kept them in touch with what it means to be human. So we decided to do this play, and I discovered that a Philadelphia composer had taken some of the poems, and there were thousands of poems written, had taken, I think it was 12 of the poems, and set them to music for children's voices, actually for the American Boy Choir. We got a hold of this music and decided to incorporate the 2. So the play was only written for 4 to 8 or 10 kids, plus a couple of adults, and particularly focused on one girl who did survive. And she kind of tells the story, but I thought we need more kids. We need somehow to represent all of these kids. So we had auditions, and we ended up with over 100 kids auditioning for that show. And it was a really powerful experience for those of us who were in it and those who saw it. In the months following that, Kay Galloway and I began thinking if kids, that many kids, are going to respond that positively to this incredibly difficult, challenging music, we really ought to provide some way for them to continue that. So it took us a couple of years, but in the spring of '96 is when we started the children's choir. We started with grades 4 through 8, and then a few years later we decided we really need to provide an opportunity for younger kids to get ready for this choir, and so we started a training choir, and that is grades 2 through 4. And then a few years after that, we thought, well, these kids are going through all of this wonderful choral experience, and then what are they going to do after they finish 8th grade? So we started a young men's choir for grades 9 through 12 and a young women's choir for grades 9 through 12. So that whole experience has been incredible. We've been designated the Pennsylvania Singing Youth Ambassadors by the state legislature. We've taken tours to New York and Toronto and Washington, D.C., Harrisburg. We've sung for the Little League World Series nearly every year now for 5 or 6 years. And then 2 years ago was the big tour, and we went to Prague. in the Czech Republic, and were able to spend a whole day actually in Terezín, the place where we started.
Whether it's performing on stage or being involved behind the scenes, the most important part of any theater company is the dedication and hard work of the many volunteers.
One of the things that I most regret is that we have not kept a clear list of all of the people who have volunteered one way or another since we began. I mean, the list, it would be thousands of people, I think. I know it would be. There are some people who are still volunteering who began volunteering 15 years ago.
My name's Kay Galloway, and I accompany all the Hamilton-Gibson choirs, and I accompany many of the shows on keyboard. I started this job back when Thomas did his first musical, and I took my daughter to try out. She was maybe 9 or so. I took her to try out for the show, and when I talked to Thomas afterwards, I said, "Do you need anybody as a rehearsal pianist or something?" And he said, "Well, I need a keyboard player for the show." And so that's how I got it. So we've been doing shows together ever since.
I'm Janelle Davis, and I do some choreography for Hamilton-Gibson. I just, whenever Thomas asks me, then if I can, then I show up and do some choreography. And I know that for some of the members of the choirs, that's not fun. They're saying, "Well, I came to sing. I didn't think I was going to have to dance, and that's not as much fun for them." So part of my job, I feel, and Thomas, I think, has the same feel, is that let's make this fun. Let's make it feel like the dance part goes with the singing, and so it's fun to do this. And we're not going to do jetés and all this really tough stuff, but just stuff that makes it feel like you're really into the music. It's neat that Thomas started pretty much by himself, and he's gathered all these really talented and dedicated people around him that have helped it grow, and grow in such good ways too. It's really cool.
I first became involved with Hamilton-Gibson, it was probably about 10 years ago, and I auditioned for Hello, Dolly, and got a part, and I played Ernestina Money, which was a perfect part for me. I had a great time, met a lot of great people, and then auditioned for another play after that, and I was totally hooked. So after that, after my involvement that year, then I was asked to be on the board of directors. What's been great about my involvement is it's been on stage and behind the scenes and in lots of different areas. A big part of our mission statement with Hamilton-Gibson is about educating the community in and about the arts. And so drama camp is one of the things that came about since my involvement. And in the beginning, I was the coordinator of it, and I've been a part of each one. So, I think the educational possibilities, in the various ways that Hamilton-Gibson can introduce the arts to lots of different corners of this county and beyond is unending, really.
I'm Bev Dockstader. I am placed with Hamilton-Gibson Productions as an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer. So my job has been here to help Hamilton-Gibson with sustainability, if there's a way that I can do that, and to increase grants monies that have helped us to expand services to kids specifically. We've been able to expand our drama camp for kids with the ability to get extra money, extra grants monies to provide scholarships to children. We've been working on increasing the availability of scholarship money for children for the choir program. It's perhaps not well advertised that there's a George Putnam Scholarship Fund for children to be involved in the children's choirs, regardless of their ability to pay. We don't want money to stop anyone from being involved in our children's programs or any of our programs. I've been mostly writing grants and helping with the facilities committee in the search for a place to have a theater, because I think that is going to speak to Hamilton-Gibson's sustainability. 15 years is a long time, especially for a group that hasn't had a home. And I think that with a home, Hamilton-Gibson will be around for a very long time to come.
I could have sworn it hadn't been there before, but the old Chinese man sold it to me anyway. For $1.95.
Now when it comes to play selections, Hamilton-Gibson Productions has added a new criteria to their list, selecting a performance which they can also take into a regional competition.
Pennsylvania Association of Community Theaters has a festival every year where community theaters can bring a play. It has to be under 60 minutes in length. It has to be able to travel, of course. You have to be able to set up the set and tear down the set in 10 minutes. And so there are some real clear limitations there. But we've begun planning our season in some way with that in mind, so there's some production that we'd be able to take there.
My name's Bill Kowalczyk. I've been a volunteer with Hamilton-Gibson for about 7 years, acting in plays, directing, writing some, and just helping out all around pretty much. This is the third play we've taken to competition, and I've been involved in all of them. This is the first time neither Thomas or I are in it, so we have all actors who have never done this before.
I want to check out the view.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Worthington. This is my first time doing a play. My husband actually got me involved, I guess you could say. He did 1 or 2 small parts and kind of encouraged me to audition for this play when it came up.
I'm Steve Worthington, disc jockey for WNBT in Wellsboro. Been doing that for 26 years, and now I'm hanging out with the Hamilton-Gibson people. I started back in August, 6 months ago, with a 10-minute play for the festival, and they had called and said, "We've got a part for you." I've never done it, and a fear of audiences, and so now I'm overcoming my fear.
Why are you doing this?
Hi, my name is Rob Cathcart. I am brand new to Hamilton-Gibson and the acting experience. There was an article in the Wellsboro Gazette newspaper that said if you've ever wanted to try out a play, then this is the opportunity for you. So I went to the audition and here we are. I feel really good about it. I'm really enjoying myself. It's a lot of work. I really admire anyone who does it, particularly some long performance. It's a lot of work to try to keep it fresh and keep doing it. So I really admire that.
Did you just call me crazy?
My name is Kristine Worthington, and how I got involved in the show is basically through family. I heard that they were looking for somebody, and Thomas called me and asked me if I would read for a part. And it was kind of a last-minute thing. I went from work and I read for the part, and things worked out, and that's how I ended up involved.
I have a hat.
My name is Brian Delp. I was out for a walk through Wellsboro one night, came in contact with Rob Kathcart, who I've known for many years. He said he was going to audition for a play, something I always thought I'd like to try, and I went for the audition, did a read, and got called back for 3 parts in the play. I'm just out to have a good time, do the best that I can do, and with a great bunch, I know we'll do well and have a good time doing it.
Well, plants and shrubs go goofy for this stuff.
All of Tioga County is so rich in community support for a lot of different projects, for people who are really interested and passionate in a lot of different things. But there are so many people who are interested in the arts here in many different ways. All the different cultural groups that we have here just kind of keep feeding, and it keeps growing, and it's a really rich, fertile soil for people to be creative and explore new things. And so we want to make sure that we keep it that way, that this is community theater. It's created by people who live here and work here, and it's for people who live here and work here. And some tourists come, of course, but that's what our goal is.
The passion and dedication by all the members who are a part of Hamilton-Gibson Productions is certainly obvious when you attend any one of their many performances. It has been said that Thomas has the talent for finding talent, as we've seen from the exceptional young voices to the many seasoned performers. Their drive to move forward and enrich our lives through the arts and theater has been embraced by our communities. And I think it's safe to say that our hills here in Tioga County will continue to be alive with the sound of music for many years to come. I'd like to thank you all for joining us on today's program, and until the next time, we'll be seeing you round the county.